Hey, thank you for choosing this episode of Cloud State of Play. We've got a real cracking episode for you with some really interesting topics, so make sure you stick around until the end. Hello and welcome. My name is Richard Simon. I am Cloud Therapist. This is the February 2026 episode of Cloud State of Play. Now, reliability is a precious commodity in the IT industry. I'm sure you'll agree. For example, we rely on cloud and web services for our daily lives and work activities and things like that, right? So here's someone you can always rely on to be here in Cloud State of Play. Is the unmistakable Paul Bevan. Paul, how you doing?
I'm fine. I wondered where you were going with that. And,
I
maybe
thought I'll do a little extra intro this time and kind
I,
of
th I
a
think
build up, a build up.
I need to be the immutable Paul Bevan,
Immutable.
never changing.
Hang on, let's make a note of that for next month.
The immutable. All right, glad to give you the lines. Anyway, good to see you. Yeah.
So now we've done our projections. We've sort of got that out of the way. That was a marathon 3+ hours, I think, by the time I compiled everything. Yeah, the year's well underway. So are you ready for another exciting and fact-filled episode?
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic.
Fired up and ready to go.
Okay, excellent. All right, so let's have a look at our topics for this Feb edition. The first topic is autonomous infrastructure, the new view from the observability tower. So half of that title is mine, half the title is from the vendor that's actually produced a report around that. So it's actually from Aviatrix, one of my favorite network monitoring, network management organizations. So we'll have a look at what are they talking about in terms of autonomous infrastructure. The second topic is data fabric versus data mesh. Are these really competing? So I know we've covered probably both of these in the past, but I thought it would be kind of really nice to put them together and try and make some sense of both of those two terms and kind of where they are and how they differ and things like that as well. So I thought we'll maybe do that for this particular month. Also, there's been lots of new stuff that's come out around sort of data fabric specifically. So I thought it would be nice to actually update you guys on that as well. We're not always about just kind of picking on one topic and then going on about it. It's also nice to be able to pick up some new things that have come out since the last time we discussed it. Okay, so that's the second one. Now, the third one is on-prem versus hyper-converged infrastructure versus public cloud. Oh, goody, I'm going to have so much fun with this one. So this is about where you should where should your AI workloads live long and prosper. I think that's my subtitle, probably, not the article's original.
Have you got the bleep button ready?
Yes, I have got the bleep button ready, or at least it'll be effected out later on. So yes, so if you hear any bleeping on topic 3, yes, it will get effected out later. Okay, now those are 3 topics, but before we get cracking on these, here is a quick channel message for you guys. Did you know that 80% of you watching right now aren't subscribed yet to this channel? Come on, guys, we can do better, surely. So please hit subscribe and the notification bell. It costs nothing, but it really helps me to keep making more videos for you. All right, back to the therapy session. So our first topic is autonomous infrastructure, the new view from the observability tower. Now, this is actually based on a report by a company called Futurium. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly, but I think it's been commissioned by Aviatrix, I believe. And the title for the actual report itself, which is a really good report, it's called Building Autonomous Infrastructure with Observability, Orchestration, and AI Ops. Now, we covered a little bit of this kind of space around observability, and we said that the traditional observability is kind of, morphing and changing. It's innovating for this year. A lot of vendors and research companies have kind of put out messages around that. So that was covered in the November 2025 episode. So go and check that out. And we said, I think it was is it the beginning of the end for traditional observability? That's what we called the topic. I think, Paul, you mentioned, your quote was, you said, we also have fragmentation and loss of direction of observability that we could cover, which is essentially why we covered it in the November episode. But there were also lots of sort of intersecting points that were happening at the time. There was some other reports that I picked up on, and we will go through that and various other ones as well. But that was the one that we did in November. We also did a little bit more in the January projections episode for this year. So go and check that out in the observability category. We kind of added a little bit more to it. But yeah, Paul, let's dive into this report. Again, obviously, all the links will be in the description of the video, so all the receipts are there for everything that we talk about. By Aviatrix, you and I exchanged some messages late in December around this. I won't go through sort of all the details of that. But basically, we kind of said, the highlights were sort of, and Aviatrix seems to be sort of really advocating for more or less what everybody else has been talking about, kind of, AI agents on one side coming into observability, and then Gen AI kind of, overtaking or replacing this sort of the more traditional AI ops. What's your take on the report and any new thoughts?
Well, let me start with what you just said about Gen AI taking over from the more traditional AI in AI ops.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that's, it's once it's in and about this report, that what you're seeing is, yes, Gen AI is going to be used to help deliver context into what's happening. But there's an interface between Gen AI that is not deterministic, and actually the need to fuse that with, deterministic AI, algorithmic AI, machine learning, call it what you will.
Yeah.
And I don't think an awful lot of people are really sort of pulling that one out. You look at the report, you look at what Dynatrace is saying. I mean, Dynatrace was interesting, that they're fusing deterministic AI with contextual analytics, which is fine. So no mention of Gen AI. We know that people like Big Panda are looking at, the use of large language models.
And that was the one that you mentioned to me when we had the conversation in December. You said Big Panda was kind of in the right direction.
But Big Panda was going down the route of not trying to make this the be-all and end-all tool, the one tool to rule the world. Whereas you look at a Dynatrace and some of the other ones that, almost like the ERP for AI ops, if you like, trying to pull everything in. And the report, the future, this report that was sponsored by Aviatrix tends to be looking now and saying, is going back to that idea of, we need to get over get rid of the silos. We need to go to almost like a single system. To which my response is, good luck with that, because we've been trying with AI ops now for the best part of 7 or 8 years to move AI ops into a position where it literally took over the role of a load of other tools, and it's never really got there. And part of that is cultural. Part of that is cultural. It's all the silos. It's people with their own favorite tools. And I don't think that's specifically changed. And the perception I got from Big Panda was that rather than trying to fight that fight, they would use the sort of contextual capabilities of LLMs, of generative AI, to put a sort of interface in, a sort of almost like a management interface that pulled it all together and gave you the context, rather than trying to say to people, throw away that tool. And yet there was very definite in the Aviatrix report that was sort of suggesting that maybe going down, you needed to get rid of all these different tools. And I just say, I think that's difficult. I mean, in an ideal world, you'd say yes, but if you look to the ERP world, did that really generate
Yeah.
the sort of flexibility, agility, cultural change that you really wanted, or did it just make a big system that was slow to react? And again,
Yeah.
you worry about that. So yes, interesting. But the other issue that came out of this report, I think, is that agentic AI is in the very early baby steps.
Oh yes. Yes, absolutely. Uh, I agree. I think those are all kind of really good points, and obviously the difficulty for us, and indeed for enterprises, really anybody out there, um, is how do you make sense of all this, right? Because there's so many different signals and competing ideas and concepts in terms of how you should be doing this and what should platforms look like and so on. But I think there's a probably a common denominator across everything, and this is kind of what I think Gartner touched on last year at their IOCS conference, and we've mentioned this in the previous episodes, guys. But there was a kind of um, a general agreement there that said, you know, um, observability as it stands cannot continue. So we can't be static. We can't be just monitoring and alerting and not doing anything else. So there has to be some kind of actionable, sort of also remediation, as I would call it, or autonomous remediation, as I would call it. So that has to be part of kind of observability tools going forward. Now, whether you just make that, just running scripts and taking actions and whatever, or you kind of can set off AI agents to that, that's a different matter. But certainly that aspect of it would be one. And then the other aspect of it is as you said, the AI ops, where potentially Gen AI can come into that. What I'm loosely calling Gen AI ops to kind of combine those two together, and where you bring in that sort of capability that Gen AI can offer to replace that sort of previous version of sort of AI that you had in AI ops. So I think those two they seem to be the two main sort of salient points that are converging, and everybody's, or not converging themselves, but kind of converging towards this new version of observability. And I don't know if you've seen that, or you've seen anything sort of more different from that.
Well, the thing I think that's starting to occur, one is as you move to agentic AI, particularly if you're using Gen AI and particularly moving to agentic AI, the issue of how you capture and the quality of the data becomes the critical element as to whether this
Yeah,
is going to succeed or not.
yeah,
And the second point is Gen AI can't do what AI ops needs all by itself, or even agentic AI. It needs the deterministic bit, because generative AI is not deterministic. You're having to fuse the two. And I think what you're starting to see is people realizing there's an underpinning design architecture that, we need to think about what we're putting together. If we just
yeah,
try and jump into Gen AI, or we just try and jump into agentic AI, without sorting the data problem, the data quality, the data silos, all those sort of issues, and getting a really good clean data flow coming in, and we don't solve you know, how do you merge the generative AI, the sort of non-deterministic and the deterministic requirements of, because at the end of the day, you're setting up your whole IT infrastructure to be optimized. It's very deterministic. You can't just go, "Oh, let's play around with it." I know humans are very adaptable, and that's the big challenge here, is that AI generally is not particularly adaptable. It's not, it needs to be given very specific sets of instructions. And Gen AI gets over that to an extent, but my view is that, and this might be a personal view, but it's one I hold quite strongly, is that without doing that foundational work, and without doing data work, and without understanding where you flip between generative AI and deterministic AI, or call it what you will, I think you run into problems.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sort of, I don't, I'm not too concerned, I think, with that. I think you're right in terms of the data. So I am more concerned about the data aspect of it. So how do we kind of, bring the data, present the data, sort of, um, you know, combine our pipelines or amalgamate our pipelines so that you're getting real-time data coming into your sort of let's say this new Gen AI ops aspect of your observability tool. So that is definitely a challenge. How do you do that? Or do you just use the traditional observability to monitor and then generate alerts, and then the Gen AI ops looks at the alerts data, not the raw kind of not the raw melt data, the metrics, events, logs, and traces that's coming in, not that telemetry, but the after the event, if you like, has been generated when an alert has been generated or the event has occurred. So that aspect of it, I don't know. That's maybe down to kind of how they do that, but certainly that data element, I think, needs to be looked at and resolved. And you're right in terms of that is not going to work unless you put all those things together, all the challenges that people have, the silos and the culture and the approach to it and things like that, and indeed the tool sets as well.
Yeah.
So that is, I think, where I see Gen AI. And then once let's say you've got that in there and you've got Gen AI ops, I think there's a huge benefits in doing it. And we've talked about this before. I don't want to kind of spin the wheel again, but the point is that Gen AI has a lot more capability than sort of the more traditional AIs, because it's conversational, because you can have a conversation with it. You can drop to a prompt in your observability tool and have a word with your Gen AI ops aspect of it, and then be able to speculate, be able to ask it for solutions, and so on. And then what people I am seeing doing, not necessarily in the observability space, but in other spaces, is they're now creating an interface within their tools to set off AI agents to go and do something. So as I said before, AI agents are not going to be standalone stuff. They're going to be augmenting existing platforms. So Dynatrace will have its own AI agents. Big Panda will have its own AI agents. Datadog will have its own AI agents and so on, but they'll all be within the platform. And then you go into the platform and say, I really want this recurring problem that we have to be, taken care of automatically. I want to automate the resolution to this problem, and whatever the problem is, a cluster goes down, you run out of space, you need to expand your website services, whatever it is, need more load balancers, whatever, need to spawn more nodes in your cluster so you can kind of do more more transactions, whatever it is. So whatever the problem is, you should be able to go into your observability tool and say, I want to start an AI agent that will now look after this aspect for me, to do this aspect for me automatically whenever that alert comes in next time, because it seems to be a recurring problem, and the Gen AI ops has picked it up as a pattern, and we've talked about it, and I've had a conversation with it, and it's given me a top 3 ways to fix it. And one of the top 3 was, it said, would you like me to set off an agent to do this for you next time? So rather than you going, okay, I have to log in and do a remote connection, blah, 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 and then run all the commands, the kubectl, Kubernetes commands or whatever to fix the problem. No, let's actually get an agent to do that based on the commands that I've run already to fix the problem this time around. So you'll be able to say to the Gen AI ops, start an agent, and here's the sequence of commands that you need to run, or allow it to determine that based on what we're trying to fix here, and then set that agent off every time that cluster or whatever it is goes down or has a problem or needs to be scaled out or whatever to cope with the demand or something. So that is something I've seen elsewhere, where you're going in and selecting that agent and then setting it off to go and do something. And that's what I'd like to see observability get to. Now, I don't know if all this conversation is leading to that, but clearly the reports, and if we kind of just go through the summary a little bit, it said things like observability underpins autonomous infrastructure. Yeah, okay, we're not arguing with that. Complex multi-cloud environments drive urgency. So enterprises struggle with fragmented visibility across their clouds and regions and so on. That's true. Networking is a blind spot. So traditional observability tools focus on apps and compute. And this is something you and I have talked about. This is why we've said Aviatrix is so unique, or relatively unique in their space, right? This cloud network management sort of stuff. Data silos limit operational intelligence, which is what you said. AI ops requires clean contextual data, which is really, like I said, what Gen AI should be able to handle. Real-time visibility becomes mandatory. Well, I think that's always been the case. This is the problem I see with observability that's not able to do this, or has not been able to do this. And even the kind of the traditional AI ops has been able to, like, pick a sort of a bag worth of events and then go, okay, well, let me go through these one at a time and let's see if, okay, these are all the same, so I'll put these here, and these are all the same, so I'll put these. Oh, I've got a pattern. I've got a couple of patterns here. Now I can tell the user that these are patterns that are occurring. And that's the old way, I think, of doing it. The new way should be transactional and real time, right? So real-time visibility becomes mandatory, and I agree with that.
Ironically, of course, and we've had this conversation before, the whole term observability started life in network management.
Really? Okay.
Where you actually, and this goes back way beyond, way
DevOps
back.
and
way before then, is that it was the different. You talked about events, you talk about logs. They are something that humans put together to, if you like, capture the most the most relevant information. So logs are not genuinely observed data. They're sort of compiled into what the people running the system think we ought to be looking at. True observability in network management was you were looking at every bit and byte as it went down, as it went along the wires. Now, of course, the wires were private in those days, so I mean, we didn't have software-defined networks, and that's all sort of changed for the thing. But that's where it came from. So yeah, I'm fully with you that, and AI ops, and I used, and I think I've said this before, but back in right at the beginning of COVID, I was on one of the journals, contacted me to talk about AI ops, and we had this a very similar session to what you and I are having now, but back in 2020. And I remember at the time he said, "I've just seen your blog where you said AI ops is like an angry teenager." And because it was at a very sort of developmental stage, but it was also like going, why the hell doesn't everybody else understand what's going on here?
Yeah.
And since that time, AI ops has been co-opted by so many other people, and it's lost its meaning.
Indeed, and our first video was actually on your AI ops report as well, so we did do that. Okay,
so it's not you, but yeah, I fundamentally agree with what you're saying.
Yeah. So okay. So that was 6. So that's 6 so far. So number 7. Automation shifts from reactive to proactive. I agree with that. Number 8, cost visibility is a strategic priority. Now, this is interesting, Paul, because I think this is stepping on the toes of FinOps. This says observability increasingly includes tracking cloud spend and optimization of resource consumption. And I think that's banging on the door of FinOps. I don't know about you, but I think that's what that's doing. And I think we will see, and again, I'm sure we've had this conversation, not officially on video or something, but we've had it offline, where we've said, why you got so many tools? Why can't we just put all the monitoring tools call it observability, whatever you want to call it, that have FinOps under they had, AI Ops under they had, the proper observability under their, cloud network management under their, data observability under there. I want everything under one roof. I don't want to open 10 GUIs every morning when I come into the office, or when I switch on my machine. As a cloud ops person or as an SRE person or whatever. Okay, so that was 8. So 9, security and compliance are integrated into observability. Infrastructure telemetry must support zero trust models and regulatory reporting. I guess to a degree, that's kind of your, again, security monitoring side. And then number 10, platform convergence is emerging. The future points towards unified observability and orchestration platforms that support autonomous, AI-driven operations. So that's just combined what I just said with the bit that I was saying earlier about autonomy, autonomous AI-driven sort of agents taking actions on our operations.
Yeah, I mean, history would tend to suggest that that'll be a bit of a challenge, I think, to get to. I think the idea of having the sort of, as you say, that come in the morning and turn on and have, if you like, my control panel and not having to fire up multiple ones is probably where it sits. But whether they are working within a unified platform that covers everything we've just talked about, or whether they're acting just to pull the relevant data they need to display to you is something, and I think it'll be more of the latter rather than the former, because I think, again, back to the ERP analogy, the minute you start making really big integrated systems like that, they get difficult to manage, get difficult to change. However, agile our development technologies now are, I think that will be a challenge.
Yeah. I mean, and I think this, I said earlier, one of the concerns was around the sort of the data, right? Collating the data and doing, acting on it in real time. I think the second one is standards. So, are we going to dump all of this on open telemetry for it to take this up and kind of, drive this forward? I don't know, but certainly I think you need some kind of standards. Otherwise, you got Dynatrace doing one thing, Big Panda doing the other, Datadog doing that, and they're more or less kind of all doing the same thing. As we've seen in the past, we've had observability, we've had APM, we've had AI ops vendors, we've had whatever, and they've all kind of been doing their, similar stuff, really. But I don't know how you're going to standardize all of this.
I mean, open telemetry is certainly gaining a lot of traction. But when you go talk to vendors about what they're doing today, and you raise the question of open telemetry, you'll get very variable answers. Others, oh no, we've got plenty of APIs, we don't need open telemetry. Is probably an oversimplification, but they'll fundamentally, you can hear them in the background going, oh God, have I got to do open telemetry as well? Because I've got all these, I've spent all my time and effort creating all these APIs and, out of the box and making it easy for people to connect. I mean, I don't know, what the challenges are, but fundamentally, there's a long way to go before all the vendors out there have really signed up to open telemetry. Yes, it'd be lovely to have open telemetry as the one and only method.
Yes.
I don't know how you get there.
Yeah, indeed. So there's also actually a few interesting quotes from the Aviatrix and Futurium report. I won't go through all this. I'll maybe just drop those in the description.
It's definitely worth a read. It's a good report.
But it is a good report, yeah. And I'm really pleased that actually Aviatrix were kind of, at the heart of that. And as we said, Gartner also picked up on similar vibes as well, or maybe they're leading the vibes at their IOCS conference last year, which I attended in London. And they had a presentation called AI is the Future of Observability. And they talked about things like enhanced root cause analysis, optimization, and continuous feedback, explainable insights, which I think these are all going towards that, what I was saying about, sort of Gen AI ops and so on. Because you could kind of get some weird and wonderful messages, and then you could say to your Gen AI ops tool, what does that mean? Or where did that come from? Who's generating that? And and so on. So you could kind of just converse with your Gen AI ops tool to kind of figure out what the problem is. And then the last one, which I don't agree with, democratize observability. I'm not sure that's a good idea. Anyway.
I wasn't even sure quite what it meant, but I mean, there you go.
That's Gartner's take.
Yeah. But there was, one last comment from me. Because they put use cases in at the end of the report, and they weren't really use cases. They were a number of quotes and sort of things like that, rather than what I call a use case. But there was a quote from a guy called Robert Blake, who I don't know. And he said, "Perfect is the enemy of good enough."
Yes.
And I read that. And I thought, actually, in this environment, that's part of the problem, is that we're too close. I said, in my own head, I was going, well, flip it. Actually, good enough is the enemy of perfect. It's just flip it the other way around. The problem is good enough left by itself can lead you astray. Perfect can slow you down unacceptably, and sometimes, when we've talked about DevOps, you sometimes feel that just do it fast and fail forward is the way to go.
Yes.
And you think, yes, okay, I get it, but and as a more of an older systems guy, it worries me. And then when you talk about the need for a foundational design work to be done, you're thinking, well, that's counter to the sort of perfect is the enemy of good enough. You need more than good enough to make sure this stuff's going to work.
Yeah, I agree. And you hit on just systems there, and kind of some of the older systems and so on that we used to have. I keep sort of slightly smiling at all of this stuff when I hear people like Gartner stand up and talk about AI is the future of observability, and then even Aviatrix, kind of saying, oh, we must have actionable, autonomous actions and through AI agents, and then others saying, oh, you need Gen AI ops, you need to bring Gen AI into AI ops to kind of make sense of all this stuff. And then, Dynatrace and Datadog and so on talking about you need AI agents because you want an agent to go out and perform some tasks when something hits the fan, and you can kind of it can fix stuff for you. And the funny thing is that we were doing all this in the data center. It was called systems management, and we had agents that you installed on every single virtual or physical machine, and then you could tell that agent when something went wrong on that machine to fix it, whether it was restarting a service, restarting the whole thing, deleting some temporary files because the folders run out of space, and your disk storage, your the RAID array is complaining. We could do all of this. We were doing all of this very well in the data center, and somehow after moving into the cloud, we've completely lost track of this. We gave it to a couple of 17-year-old kids to write observability, and do DevOps, and they completely forgot how to write a systems management tool with freaking agents that can go out and take actions for you. And now it's all so fragmented.
Well, exactly.
Right? We have people like HashiCorp talking about Infragraph and saying, oh, now we're going to run an inventory. Infragraph is going to run an inventory and figure out all your machines, all the VMs, all the containers, all the, everything in your cloud environment. We're going to figure out everything that's in your cloud. Yeah, we used to call it Tivoli inventory back in the day, back in the 90s.
But it was fairly constrained. The number of systems, the number of endpoints, the number, So yeah, I get the basic principles haven't changed. I always say this, and I get a little boring, and people coming new into the industry going, oh, God, he's at it again, But things that were being done in the 70s, probably even before then, in terms of the way in which systems were managed, are still around today. And there's things that the IBMs of this world invented that, although they've been adapted somewhat, still resonate back to to what was going on then. Yeah. But it's you're right, the fragmentation and the sheer scale of what's going on means it's difficult. one of the things that we fell into the trap of thinking was that we could automate the sort of process of discovery. And that proved very,
Yeah,
very difficult as to
yeah,
what all the items were out there, and
yeah,
therefore you thought you got automated discovery, and then when it broke, you suddenly realized that you couldn't see all the bits, you hadn't
yeah.
actually cataloged them all.
Yeah, exactly. And this is what this is what I think Infograph and I think some other tools that are coming out are trying to do.
Yeah,
They're a discovery tool, they're an inventory tool to find out everything that you have in your cloud environment. But like I said, and it wasn't just IBM tools, all systems management tools from HP, Dell, third party ones like SolarWinds and everybody else, they all used to do this very well in the data center. And it was all under one roof. And you took all the actions and you wanted to do something, you'd install an agent on that VM or or that
yeah,
endpoint or whatever it was.
yeah,
And then you tell the tool, every time that service goes down, restart it for me, or restart the whole machine, or delete that temporary folder with all the files that are in a temp folder or something to clear up the mess, and the OS is not complaining to you about running out of space or something. All the usual ops stuff that we come up with, and some of it we still do, and some of it is even more exaggerated, I think, in the cloud. We used to do very well with systems management tools, and I say that why? Because I used to do systems management. I spent 10 plus years at IBM doing that, and I got to learn all of these tools, install even the third-party ones. I got to work with all of those tools. I appreciate that now. Whatever we used to do in the data center is like 10 times the amount, which is why we're not able to cope with the melt, telemetry. So that's why we have observability tools to kind of take that information in, and it should almost be called absorbing tools or something. It's not really just observability, because it's kind of soaking in all this
one day, my boy, you will develop a term that becomes the industry standard.
The industry standard. Not today, but maybe not today. But yeah, but we'll keep on trying.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So there's a lot more, guys, from Dynatrace. I'll drop all the links in the description of the video. There was actually a good one from the news stack around OpenTelemetry and about OpenTelemetry saving observability, which is actually a really good one. Maybe we should have covered that as well. That's a relatively new one. Grafana, again from the news stack, Grafana taking the lead in AI for observability, or has Grafana? That's actually a good way to put it. Has Grafana taken the lead in AI for observability? And then there was one which kind of, I think, just went a little bit too far out for me, which was about agentic cloud operations and Azure Copilot. So it's a bit too far for me. I don't think I want to sort of stretch it that far. I'd be happy with just AI agents taking some actions and Gen AI ops doing.
That was so far. That was so far out. That last one. It was like,
yes.
I think I shall be long out of this world before that one becomes a reality.
Yeah, well, hopefully I'll be at least retired or something by then. So anyway, so all of that stuff will be included in the description of the video. Have a look at that. Anything of interest? Let us know what you guys feel about all this. Are you sort of overwhelmed with observability tools? Do you see that things like AI agents could help? Do you see things like sort of Gen AI coming into AI ops that might be helpful as well? Let us know. Drop us a comment in the video section, and then let us know what you guys think. Hello, my dear subscribers and audience. Thank you for sticking with this video. I wanted to provide you with this quick addendum to this particular topic. After Paul Bevan and I recorded the February episode of Cloud State of Play, a report landed on my desk from Virtana called the Observability AI Reckoning. Unfortunately, it arrived too late to include in the main discussion, but I think it's worth mentioning because it's basically pointing in the exact same direction as what we've been talking about. The main argument in the report is that the agentic AI is fundamentally changing what observability needs to deliver. Historically, observability was about collecting telemetry, so usual metrics, events, logs, and traces, or MELT as I like to call it. and helping engineers diagnose problems, of course. But Virtana argues that in modern hybrid and multi-cloud environments, systems have simply become too complex for human-scale operations. I like that term, human scale. Their view is that fragmented observability stacks, lots of tools, lots of dashboards, lots of siloed data, have become an operational liability. They increase MTTR, or mean time to recovery. They create blind spots and force teams to over-provision infrastructure just to stay safe. So the report says the industry now needs a unified observability technology, a single system of record where telemetry from infrastructure, services, applications, data systems, and AI workloads is normalized and correlated. That unified view is what enables agentic AI to actually work. Virtana talks about the need for both deep observability, meaning high-fidelity signals across the stack, and broad observability, meaning visibility across the entire enterprise environment. I agree with that very much. And once that foundation is in place, observability can move beyond insight to autonomous intervention. Using MCP servers and natural language interaction, AI agents can investigate incidents, perform root cause analysis, correlate events, and even initiate remediation actions across systems. So, observability effectively evolves from a system of insight into a system of action. And the report's bottom line is pretty clear. In the age of agentic AI, observability consolidation isn't just a trend anymore. It's becoming a mandate. This is interesting because it's pretty much the same direction that Paul and I have been discussing in earlier episodes of Cloud State of Play, as well as the January projections episode for 2026. Hey, if you are enjoying the content, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. That would really help me out. Thank you. Okay, so let's move on to the second topic, Paul, which is data fabric versus data mesh. Now, we looked at what is data fabric, believe it or not, so I went back and dug this up, in the September 2024 episode of Cloud State of Play. So we've been at this for some time. Yeah, indeed. So, and this was also, again, a follow-up from our projections episode for January of this year. So go and check that out as well. There's lots more stuff in that. So first of all, I just wanted to start with Gartner because they've done a good chart on data fabric. So again, I'll drop the link in the description. I think they posted it on LinkedIn. So that was interesting. I think this kind of started, did this not start our conversation around data fabric? I'm sure I saw this and posted it to you and, oh, that looks interesting.
Well, I was dealing with a company called InterSystems who developed a data fabric product or a data fabric solution, a platform for their InterSystems IaaS data platform. So I've been looking at that for some time, and in Bloor, Bloor has always been a data focused analyst house. That's where it came from. People like Robin Bloor who started it up were very data focused. And my colleague Andy Haler did a useful sort of summary of what data fabric was a year ago, back in February last year. So, and I'll leave that with you to put up as well and give you a sense of what it is. So it's not brand new by any means, but it does seem to be gaining a little bit of traction. I think that's for sure.
Yeah. So like I said, so Gartner, and yeah, it'll be useful to get that. So I'll make a note of that and then try and include some of that stuff in the description of the video. So Gartner started with that data fabric, but they also put out the tech pillars of data fabric. So again, I'll either put that up on the screen or we'll drop a link for you guys on that description. So that was quite interesting. That kind of looked more at the tech side of kind of the fabric description. but yeah, so we need to kind of really maybe just answer some of the questions that we put out. So, around data fabric, what is data fabric? So a sort of an architectural approach that integrates and unifies data across hybrid and multi-cloud environments using metadata-driven automation. So it provides consistent data access, governance, and orchestration across distributed systems. And the goal is to enable real-time trusted data consumption without requiring centralization. So that was the definition for data fabric. Well, I don't know if you agree with that. Does that make sense? Was that a word salad?
It's a little bit wordy. Let me try and break it down a bit, because that's a bit wordy.
Go on.
In fact, what data fabric has a goal which says, if you want to be able to inquire on and work on data from an analytics point of view, the tradition has been that, data warehouses are made, or data lakehouses or whatever. Yeah. You fundamentally move data from your operational databases into an analytics data warehouse or whatever. And the challenge was that it basically couldn't keep up with all the changes going on with all the new data structures,
right.
and data warehouses particularly became quite difficult to manage, that when you had when businesses were acquired and you were trying to put two things together, and you had two different data warehouses, the reorganization made a database reorganization look like a piece of cake. I mean, it was really difficult, and it was really difficult to move. So the principle behind data fabric appears to be that you don't move the data. It stays in the operational database, and you use that sort of layer that Gartner were talking about, the sort of metadata layer to describe what's going on. And the bit that they didn't talk about there, and I don't know whether it was in their pillars, was, you put a semantic layer in as well, so that you start to define everything in business terms so that the UI for the end user is usable. So the data fabric becomes this, in fact, I should call it, basically a network for ingesting data very, very rapidly, making sure it's clean, making, all that sort of stuff, and making sure it's usable by using this sort of metadata layer to make sure that the data coming through is consistent, and then giving a sort of semantic layer that enables you and I, if you like, as end users, to be able to inquire on stuff and use it for analytics. Now, challenge for that is it's great in the sense that you don't move the data twice, but the amount of data moving into and along a data pipeline is huge. And if you've got an application that requires, almost sort of instantaneous, the challenges of making that instantaneous are quite difficult. So. But that's the fundamental difference. And then the title of this section was Data Mesh versus Data Fabric. Fundamentally, the two are conceptually the same, apart from Data Fabric was always designed as being a centralized approach. Data Mesh does the same sort of job, but in a decentralized way, so, around different business units or different, literally being able to split it up into different. And you can think, well, okay, this is the argument about, central control versus distributed agility, all those sort of issues that come in, and I've just described where, so much having to be done through the central fabric rather than distributed fabric would that work better. So there's trade-offs, but the fundamental, I think, thing you're looking at is don't recreate another data warehouse, don't recreate another data lake or a repository. Use the operational data and use the metadata layer and the semantic layer to make it A, consistent, and B, something that the end user can use.
Yeah. Okay, so let's pin that for a minute, but we'll come back for that. So let's just look at the data mesh itself. So what is a data mesh? So the definition I got was a decentralized, as you said, data architecture that treats data as a product owned and managed by domain teams. This is the federated bit, I think, where that comes in. it distributes responsibility for data quality, governance, and access across the organization rather than centralizing it, as you said. The goal is scalable, self-service data ownership aligned to business domains and supported by federated governance. So I think data fabric is kind of saying, well, you've now got a whole bunch of databases, you've got a whole bunch of warehouses and lakes and what have you. Okay, nothing I can do about that, but we can maybe allow you or prevent you from propagating that even more by grabbing the metadata that we need and then being able to use that to present stuff.
Yeah.
Right. So you carry on just scaling those, whether it's up or, up or out. But you can just carry on what you've got, basically. So don't change anything. Don't try and put it all together and put it through a pipeline and ETL and ELT it and whatever, all that kind of stuff. Whereas the data mesh is saying, okay, so you've got them all federated. They're all in different places. Accounting have got their own, marketing's got their own, sales got their own, what have you. Okay, we'll just manage them as they are, and we'll just do some central stuff, but just manage them as they are. And here's some rules for how to govern them. Yeah, so keep the domains, but the quality, the governance, and access needs to be across the organization. So everybody should be able to get access to them. But you, as marketing, you as sales, keep the keep the ownership, basically, of those. And I think that's kind of what I'm getting from. That's the vibe I'm getting from data mesh.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with anything because I think you've just articulated in a slightly different way what I was trying to say too.
Yeah. So it's kind of the colloquial version, if you like.
But the sort of challenge, I think, is when you allow people from outside your domain to access and use it.
Mm-hmm.
Is the terminology the same in your domain as it is in their domain?
Well, it's. I mean, one thing they don't say is standardization, actually. So you've got data quality, governance, access, across the organization, yes, and obviously ownership, but nothing about standardization.
And I go back, to
that's a big worry for me.
It is a worry for me. I mean that, and therefore you're thinking, well, if you're going to standardize so that everybody within the organization understands the terminologies and understands the nomenclature, the way it's put together, why would you go distributed? You go centralized. It's sort of, I don't know. I mean, and again, there'll be counter arguments to say that's too slow and it's too unwieldy, but the issue, and particularly when you come back to agentic AI, is agentic AI, we're quite good at knowing that if I say, a railway carriage is called a carriage and somebody else says it's called a car, the Americans call a railway carriage a railway car.
Yeah.
In your head, you go, yeah, okay, I know the two. And that's a very simplistic thing.
Yes.
If you make it too complex, we're quite good at working that one out. And I think certainly in the early days of agentic AI, it may get really good in years to come, but early on, it's going to struggle to know whether that is two separate items or one item that just happens to have a different name.
Yeah. I agree, I think, with that. And I think the other problem that both Fabric and Mesh have is that they're all pre-Gen AI. So now with Gen AI, what are you going to do? Are we going to just augment Gen AI to these? Or is Gen AI going to kind of take us in a different direction, completely different direction? I don't know, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. But these are both, I think, very, enterprisey, corporate level type of activity that you do. These are not trivial things that you do over the weekend. If you were to implement these things, it needs pretty much everybody in IT and then some to be, to be present, I think, to make them happen.
But I think like anything else, you start these off on small projects. And And you probably started off with companies that already know, how to do these things. It feels like a step-by-step process. It's not, I mean, anything to do with data rationalization for AI smacks of we need to do this in small, manageable chunks because otherwise it's overwhelming.
Mm. Mm. Okay, so so looking at the top 5 sort of differences then between data fabric and data mesh. So I asked ChatGPT to have a quick look, and I said, okay, so can you give me like a top 5 differences? Although we kind of pretty much know what they are, but I thought it would be amusing to do that. So here we go. So architecture, data fabric is a centralized technology layer. Data mesh is a decentralized organizational model. I like that, actually. It's a good way to contrast the two. 2, ownership. Data fabric keeps ownership with a central team. Data mesh assigns ownership to domain teams. Okay, that's straightforward. 3, integration. Data fabric automates data integration across systems, whereas data mesh treats domains as producers of self-serve data products. And it is, I remember that the first encounter I had with data mesh, it said, you got to treat your data as a product. And that was kind of one of the first things that they did, that they mentioned. Number 4, governance. Data fabric uses centralized automated governance, whereas data mesh uses federated governance across domains. So I'm assuming it's still the same single governance. It's just been kind of dished out to all of the domains. That's what they mean by in the data mesh.
Yeah, there must be some way of ensuring that consistency, the global consistency in an organization. Be interesting, but yeah.
Which is what we were saying, right? Which is what I was saying about, a standardization, right? And keeping consistent. So I hope that falls under this kind of governance umbrella. Okay. And then number 5, primary goal. Data fabric focuses on unified access and automation. Data mesh focuses on scaling data through domain autonomy. So unified access and automation and scaling data versus scaling data. Unified access for data fabric?
Yeah, I suppose I was looking at the scaling data one that said, what's the constraint on scaling data through a centralized one? Don't know.
Nothing.
Nothing. Exactly. So okay, you're trying to give this. It's the sort of it's the EU as a single entity or the EU as a federation of different states, and it's a very, at one level it's very different, but at an overall level it's the same bloody thing, excuse my French, or German or French or Italian or whatever.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, so that was kind of the ChatGPT's attempt at top 5. Now, you and I went back and forth in early January or mid-January. We talked about it, and you mentioned, who was it now? Let me see. Oh, hang on. So you said to me, back in 2012, I came across Cloud Sigma. So you talked about Cloud Sigma while you were at Equinix. You're at Equinix? Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh dear. I hope you've erased that from your LinkedIn profile, Paul.
Oh, it's interesting couple of years.
Yeah. So anyway, so you mentioned Cloud Sigma. Now, did I dig up? I'm sure. Let me just have a look.
Link. You've got a link to the.
Yeah. But there was something else as well. Hold on a minute. Let me just see if I can find my. Oh, apparently I didn't. Okay, never mind. And I think it was that link. Okay. So you mentioned, yes, Cloud Sigma, and we were kind of talking a little bit about that. So they had what was it called? Something fabric. I can't remember what the product was.
It was basically a cloud-based, sovereign compatible.
Yes.
It's whole sort of EU sovereignty piece in a cloud delivery model.
Yes. Yeah, so you did mention that, and that was from Cloud Sigma, I believe, and you also
Yeah.
mentioned InterSystems as
Yeah,
well
I mean,
as a
the Cloud
previous
Signal
conversation.
one was something very new. I just came across it and looked and thought, because Cloud Sigma was one of those sort of cloud challenges, European cloud challenges that never really took
Yes.
off. I thought they were quite smart when I saw them in 2012, but then, quite a lot of stuff looked different in 2012 than it does in the 2020s. And and
Yeah.
and and I was quite surprised to see them sort of pop up again. I think something
Yeah.
I thought they were quite smart.
I found the chart, so we will give you links to these and
But
then some guys.
yeah,
Omni Fabric.
OmniFabric, that was
Yeah,
that
that's
word.
the one.
But it's a sort of cloud-based, sovereign compliant
Yeah.
data fabric as
Yes.
a service.
Yes. Yeah, and it looks it looks quite good, but whether it works or not, I don't
No,
know.
it was
So
just
that
a
was
yeah.
that. So, but it was interesting to mention because I think what this is showing is kind of apart from these universal terms like data fabric and data mesh, there was people actually attempting to do this stuff prior to that and kind of coming up with
And
similar
Microsoft
ideas or same ideas.
used the term Microsoft Fabric, but that actually looks to me like, from what I've seen of it, is they're just creating another data warehouse, for goodness sake.
Yeah,
It
it's yeah.
doesn't,
So there was a video on that. Again, we'll drop the links. I think they announced that last year,
yeah,
and there was a schema evolution in Microsoft Fabric as well, and I think that's an article or a post
yeah.
as well. So there's lots of stuff kind of this around that. These are all kind of in the same sort of space, in the same ballpark. So it'll be nice to kind of just mention these and make folks aware of them. But yeah, those were kind of the main two things. Oh yeah, I've got the Omnium Fabric here actually. So tell a lie, I do have the link to that. Okay, so going beyond that, so this was kind of I guess triggered by Gartner, and then we kind of looked at it from a sort of what's the difference between the two type of thing, and then we mentioned Cloud Sigma with their Omni Fabric, Microsoft, as you said. Now there was also an interesting one. I think you mentioned to me data management trends, which you shared with me from last
Well,
year, I think.
that's
And Andy Haler, is that the one you
that's
mentioned?
Andy Haler,
Perfect.
but
Okay.
that's the one that gives what I think is quite a succinct description of mesh versus fabric.
Right.
It covers a number of other data trends during the year around
Mhm.
cloud and around catalogs and the like. It's worth a read from a general perspective, but he has a complete section on data fabric and data mesh,
Yeah.
and it just gives a fairly sort of good layman's description of what it is. I mean, he was
Okay.
doing one of his projections for the year for
Right.
2025 back in February last year.
Okay. Cool. All right. And then I picked up something from Andreas Horn, who's from, I think he's a AI ops something at IBM. I think I did mention he should change
You
his
do?
name, his title to Gen AI Ops lead at IBM. And normally I don't really agree with a lot of the stuff that he puts out. I kind of find it slightly gaslighting. But there was some interesting stuff that he mentioned. He said a familiar enterprise, this is a post, a familiar enterprise pattern has emerged over the years. Every new buzzword gets plugged into an already overloaded stack, data stack. So things like Gen AI platform, LLM integration, reverse ETL, data mesh, lakehouse, CRM sync, and so on. Then he went on to say Gen AI amplifies what you already have, which I guess is true. A lot of people are saying that. Saw something similar in the DevOps report. Okay, and then then he says everyone keeps adding, to the to those kind of platforms. Nobody removes anything. Nobody simplifies anything. Nobody architected for this in the first place. So true, but I think it's because it's not as in data, it's just not as clear cut, maybe as other disciplines of IT that we have. I don't know, maybe the architecture is just not there, and it's just so disparate that you end up just kind of saying, well, let's just make the most of it, or let's just do the best that we can, right? Architecturally, in terms of the design decisions. So whether you end up with a data fabric, or whether you end up with a data mesh or whatever, I guess is down to your organization and how much effort you put into organizing your data, really. So yeah, I don't know. But anyways, it says, this is why so many AI projects truly stall, because the foundation is a maze of adapters, patches, and dependencies that nobody fully owns. I agree on that statement, in that, again, our Achilles heel for Gen AI projects to succeed is the data, right? And how do we present them? How do we present our corporate data really to them? And this is not even talking about real-time data. Your Gen AI actually dealing with real-time data as is coming in, from wherever it's coming in, IoT devices, from customer transactional stuff, your database, whatever, your website, and what have you. I don't know. It's all, maybe all of those, but the point is that we're not very good at presenting that right now. We present it as a static thing. We train the models maybe on it, or customize the model, fine tune the model, and do some RAG and stuff like that, on the model, based on our sort of data, but not really. But we don't have an automated way to feed that data into the model, and certainly projecting forward, there isn't anything that's kind of working towards that to make that a real-time thing either. If it's being done as proprietary, it's DataOps Live or Rubrik or somebody like that picking it, or Snowflake or someone like that picking it up, and then saying, okay, so we need to kind of automate this and make it real time. Actually, this will be a good question for the guy from DataOps Live that I met, and the Snowflake guys. So I'm going to make a note of that and ask them when I see them next time. But yeah, so I do agree with that point, that this is why so many AI projects stall, because the foundation is a maze of adapters and patches and dependencies that nobody fully owns. Make sense?
I'm not arguing.
Okay, so then he says, okay, so in 2026, we need to treat architecture as a product. Okay, yeah, that's kind of maybe a slight steal from data mesh. Put data governance back into the equation, data mesh. Reduce complexity, data mesh. Standardize integrations. Yeah, I think those kind of very high level, they do make sense, but how do you implement them, I think, is the important thing, and there's no answer to that.
We've struggled with that for as long as the data processing industry, because it was called data processing to start with, has been around.
Yeah.
We've struggled with it.
Yeah.
And that's because we're not very good at articulating and then sticking to the rules we set up.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, and this is what I think that's what I was saying earlier, that there isn't that kind of set rules of engagement in the data space as maybe you get elsewhere. So like we just talked about observability, and whether you like it or not, whether it's there or not, whether it's everybody's conforming to it or not, there is open telemetry. And if you kind of really want to standardize with everybody else, OTel is a potential way to go and do that, right? Hey, if you are enjoying the content, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. That would really help me out. Thank you. Our third topic, on-prem versus HCI versus public cloud. Where should your AI workloads live long and prosper? A little note on Star Trek there. Okay, so this was originally a chart, a really good chart. Again, I'm going to put this up on the screen, or you can see it in the description of the video, by a chap called Vernon Neil Reed. I don't know Vernon. I don't even know what he does, but the chart looked interesting to discuss so I thought we'll go through it. He's put out 7 points about it, I think he mentioned. Was it 7 or more?
7. It was 7.
Okay. All right. I didn't cut those off then. It wasn't like 10 and I chopped off 3. So he's talking about it from what is he talking about? He's several sort of layers of that. And he's mentioning I mean, he compares all 3, right, versus each other in the chart. I believe he did that in the chart. And yeah, so hyperconverged infrastructure, on-prem, and cloud is the comparison. And yeah, and then he goes through those 7 or more, I think, sort of sections.
Yeah. I mean, I know you've got your own particular views about HCI, which are, we'll see what comes out. But
yeah,
I just thought that the actual premise of what he was doing it on, not the premises, the premise, the premise of what he was doing it on was wrong. HCI versus traditional on-prem versus cloud. He's using his terminologies, because HCI generally runs on-prem, doesn't it? I mean, why would you run HCI? Or you can run it, I suppose, in a co-location facility. But
I think he means it as in the technology and wherever the technology is sitting, and then on-prem. In this case, if you look at it from that point of view, it's just your traditional data center SANs and and switches versus so that kind of usual sort of configuration versus a hyperconverged infrastructure, which is all of those kind of combined together.
Yeah, but probably nowadays with the components that you would actually use if you built your own, if you're building your own on premises, so I was a little, and the other question was, isn't what he's talking about a mainframe?
He's with those seven points, he's just built himself a mainframe.
Well, yeah, but you look at what IBM are doing with System Z, for example, and with the way in which they're trying to push, their AI accelerators within System Z and positioning that as an inferencing machine.
Yeah.
And actually, there's a lot of sense they talk. If you're an IBM customer, it might make sense. It wouldn't make sense for a non-IBM, mainframe customer to go down that route, I don't think. But fundamentally, an HCI box is just, new, Windows or Linux-based systems where you put everything inside one cabinet.
Linux-based, yeah.
Yeah, one space. It'd be a rack space, but it's effectively a bit like a cabinet.
Yeah.
And which is, but you actually look and say all that integration going on is really what happens in a mainframe. It's to make the operational life easier for the management piece again, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's that. So I was a little sort of, oh God, here we go again. Using different terminologies to describe things that aren't really quite right, and then he sort of tacks cloud on the end, which was odd.
Yeah. So I mean, he is looking at it from an AI workloads perspective. Now, I don't think you really. First of all, for me, I don't think you can really look at your AI workloads from a location perspective, unless you're regulated. In which case, let's say if you're in the finance space, and then the regulators say, well, you got to have it sovereign and it's got to be on-prem. Okay, so that's a decision made. I don't need to really think about that.
Well,
because I have to do that.
Training will be different from inference, though, won't it?
Yeah. I mean, I actually, I don't know for banks, but maybe everybody else, yes. And you would do that, and then you would say, okay, well, look, we're wall to wall Azure, or we're wall to wall AWS. We're another company, so we don't really care about sovereignty and stuff like that. So we can just stay in AWS. We're very good at doing AWS stuff. All our IP when it comes to building cloudy stuff is in based on AWS. We use a lot of their PaaS layer, so we'll just stay in AWS, and that would be kind of your, based on that type of decision, not necessarily the technology that's kind of underneath. So I don't see somebody who's in AWS, and as you said, who's just done their training in AWS, and goes, "Oh, let's put the inference in Azure." I don't think anybody's going to want to do that. I'm not sure that anybody's going to want to do that, let alone say, well, we've learned it all on AWS. Now let's take it and put it on VMware or HCI, which is a completely alien technology to what we just built, right? So we have to go and learn the platform and then put our, inference on that new platform. And I don't think it's that type of thing. It's much more security, sovereignty decision, and also
and latency decisions, particularly when inferencing is concerned.
Exactly, and experience as well. Yeah, it's also an experience. Look, we've learned our stuff on AWS, or we're wall to wall Azure, right? So we're clearly going to use Azure AI and all the other stuff that you get from OpenAI through Azure and so on. And we're probably going to end up doing our inference there as well, yeah, or a mobile version of that.
You and I have debated, I was going to say argued, the toss around using Outpost or Azure Stack, out at the edge.
Azure Local.
Huh?
Azure Local.
Oh, is Azure Local now? Is
yeah.
It?
Oh, yeah. It's a new year. We have to have a new name.
It's a bit like your Asda Local or your Tesco Local.
No, it's a bit like IBM. Every 6 months, you just change all your product names.
Yeah, but I could get the point, because I was not convinced by those approaches. Where was the edge? But when you look at it, certainly for factory automation, and using AI inferencing in the factory, then, and you're an AWS shop, then why wouldn't you put AWS, Outposts or whatever they're going to call it tomorrow, out in the factory as well?
Yeah.
Because it's, as you say, it's having a common approach. It's understandable. We know how to run it. And it's, and putting it out there gives us the inference that we need, the latency that we need. You still say, right, okay, there's a bit of a challenge when you come to the automotive industry, where you're actually putting it into the self-driving taxi or whatever that is. But fundamentally, the most of it would work perfectly well in that sort of mode. And the other issue, and again, this is back to my on-prem argument, is cloud is two things. Firstly, it's a set of tools and processes and technologies that enable the sort of the cloud to grow. But cloud is also fundamentally a consumption model. So why wouldn't you look at this in that sort of light? If you're going to say, use a private cloud, how are you going to set that up? Is that any better than having a public cloud? Apart from the sovereignty issue, all those sort of challenges. So it was. He made a valiant effort to do this. I mean, operational complexity was an interesting one. He said HCI simplifies operations through unified management. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Well,
traditional on-prem requires multiple domain experts. Not really. I mean,
but those are two different things.
Huh?
I mean, operations is one thing.
Yeah.
Then domain experts is something else.
Yeah, exactly. So I didn't get that. And then cloud minimizes infra effort, but introduces governance complexity. Really? So I think he made some very broad claims and part of his problem was he was talking about three sections that weren't well defined as far as so he got himself into. I thought he got himself into a muddle.
And you can see that. I mean, it's heavily slanted towards HCI because HCI comes as the winner out of all of the comparisons in the table. Without
understanding his background and what angle he's coming at it from.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. It is slanted. I mean, his.
But then at the end he says there's no universal answer.
Exactly. And then he goes into
Hang
the
on, but I just thought you were slanting towards HCI. That's what it reads like
yeah.
anyway.
Each infrastructure model has strengths, but the right choice depends on AI latency requirements, data residency constraints,
Mm.
GPU scaling strategy. The other thing I was going to put in there was, which he didn't include, was staff skills and availability. You
Mm.
know, which way are you going to go? You might need to go down the cloud route because you haven't got the scale.
And this is what I'm saying. This is what I was saying to you earlier about, a lot of we kind of these decisions will gravitate in the direction of what are our current capabilities,
Yeah.
not towards. I mean, even if something else, like I said, if we're in AWS and Azure has got the most fantastic AI layers and PaaS and whatever that can just essentially make it like press a button and it all gets deployed for us type of wizard, it's still we still can't just jump into Azure because we're an AWS
Mm.
crowd and we're into AWS and our IP is there and our guys are skilled and certified on AWS, not Azure necessarily. So in order for an organization to move a an important critical workload as AI, whatever AI is doing for you, into a different platform, or to even actually dare stand there and go, should we go with HCI or Azure? And now that we're in AWS fully, should we consider HCI or Azure for this one? Oh, I don't know. This is it's not even that kind of a decision. Like I said, unless you have been kind of blind to all the sovereignty stuff and you've done your stuff in AWS and you go, yeah, it's all working great. Our pilot is fantastic. We got so many good results out of it. Now we want to provision it into production. And then your CIO goes, oh, hang on a minute. Do you not know about sovereignty? Sovereignty what? And then you kind of say, no, we have to run it, in a managed service or, on-prem or something because of sovereignty requirements, right? Unless it's something like that, you would otherwise just go with what you know and go in the environment that you have at the moment. And like we said, whether it's the remote version of that, so it's the Azure local or, EKS anywhere or whatever it is, their outposts or something, but it'll still be that same environment, same skills, same services, same PaaS, same tool set, same monitoring, provisioning tools, scripts are the same and so on, because that's what you're used to doing. You're not going to go, oh yeah, so we provisioned, we tested it, we provisioned and tested in AWS, and the pilot went really well, and now we're going to choose Nutanix to deploy the inference into production. It's just, I just don't see how that would happen for anybody. I don't see that.
And actually, implicit in the whole thing he's doing here is it will lock you into one of the three areas he's talked about. Because once you start down that track, what you've just explained, that's what it is. And therefore, he's slanted it towards HCI because he's probably comfortable with HCI,
Yeah.
Okay, fine.
Yeah. I mean, that's fine. You kind of, you're putting a stall out in regards to that, and you're giving, reasons for that. So he's brought the receipts, but that doesn't mean somebody else is not going to bring their own receipts, which are completely opposite to yours. Yeah.
I mean,
and argue a counterpoint.
Yeah, and particularly, and you think about, we tend to get sort of a bit hung up, I think, on the fact, all this new technology coming along, and we assume that everybody can just deploy it. It's not going to be an issue, and it's not even, the reality is, unless you're a startup or you're a real cloud native, digital environment, you're going to have such a mix of stuff. Stuff, and I mean all sorts of different types of IT in there, that actually this becomes almost like a minor, discussion point. Is, where do I put this? HCI, cloud, or on-premise.
That's what I'm saying. And it goes the other way. If you are an HCI and you're wall-to-wall Nutanix today, and you've just done your pilot or proof of concept for your Gen
Yeah.
AI project, whatever it is. You're not going to go, okay, now we've done that. Let's go into AWS, somebody that we've never heard of, we don't have any contact with, we've never bought a single, service from, and just move everything into AWS.
I think we ought to write a book about learning to love and live with lock-in.
Yeah.
With vendor lock-in, because you're going to get it somewhere.
Oh yeah. I mean, but the thing that you can do, and this is something obviously I advocated both at T-Systems, but also just generally speaking with customers, and just generally speaking, kind of in IT tech terms, is I can't emphasize enough the ability to abstract from the underlying platform by having some kind of an abstraction layer, putting in some kind of software abstraction layer that takes you away from that platform. It's not going to be 100%. It's never 100%, but to a degree, you have that ability. There's a capability that you can achieve, and whether you're running on HCI or VMware in terms of virtualization, whether you're running in AWS or any of the public clouds and so on. Having that layer, whatever that layer is, and you can probably choose, there's some choices available to you. Whatever that layer is, you can abstract away from these platforms. So if it does come to moving somewhere else, you're not moving the platform, you're moving really the workload. You're focused on where the workload goes, because wherever you're going to run it next, and whatever that looks like, it's the same technology, the same abstraction layer is going to run there as well. So your workload is used to the abstraction layer, not the underlying platform. Yeah. So that abstraction layer literally abstracts you away and removes whatever the dependencies on the underlying platform.
Yeah, I think that's a very valid point. I think it shouldn't be underestimated that there will be some snafus and little things to fix as you move from one platform to another. But I absolutely agree with you. And of course, we're still not got to grips, certainly with large enterprises in certain markets like financial services, of how the hell they ever move their legacy apps. I mean, their legacy mainframe apps, their monolithic apps.
Well, they're looking at it's the kind of the recent sort of Anthropic announcements around being able to translate your COBOL code into whatever language that you want, which caused IBM's shares to drop dramatically recently. So I think that sort of AI code generation is what they're looking to help with that type of thing. How do you actually migrate the code, not the?
I think it's coming. I do think it's coming.
Yeah.
Is it going to be a threat to IBM in the next 2 years? No. Is it going to be a threat to IBM in 10 years' time? Yes, absolutely.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. But yeah, cloud abstraction, I think, is the way to try and avoid some of those lock-ins and so on. Like I said, it's never 100%, but there is an ability where your skills and the IP that you're investing is in whatever's above that, from that abstraction layer and above, and not from the cloud or whatever platform that you have and upwards. So you're actually kind of removing that layer below.
You have to think about how you transition your people as well. Because otherwise you end up throwing them all out and trying to find new ones, and the new ones are bloody expensive. Because they've got all the latest new skills, and you've just wasted a whole bunch of real expertise that could be refactored.
And I go home as an AWS expert on a Friday, and I come back on Monday, and I'm asked to recertify for Nutanix. Fantastic.
Yeah, great.
What do you think I'm going to do?
Depends on how much money you're paying me.
Yeah. Or maybe somebody else will pay me.
Sorry to be so grasping at this. This
wonderful. Or maybe somebody else will pay me for those same skills, and I don't have to recertify.
Yeah.
There you go. Anyway, okay, so I think we're pretty much there, Paul. We've exhausted the heck out of those three topics. Thank you as always. Really appreciate your insights. Yeah, how do you feel now after we've done those topics? Exhausted?
Bit like I did before we started them.
Did you get anything off your chest? No, that's the important thing.
Yeah, one or two things.
One or two things. Okay.
One or two things. And you controlled yourself on HCI.
I did. Yeah, I did. Although, yeah, our exchange was slightly more humorous than that.
When you started talking about Nutanix, I thought, oh, he's not going to go off.
Oh no! Oh no! Yeah, I didn't froth at the mouth or anything, so that's good.
No, absolutely.
Okay.
Very
cool.
good.
All right. Well, yeah. So thank you. I appreciate everything from all your input. What do you guys think about all these topics? Are you using any of the technology that we mentioned? And is any of this kind of affecting you? That's really the sort of interesting things. Please share your thoughts and comments with us if you have any. Don't be shy. I promise to reply to all the comments that people make. I think it's always cool to hear from you and kind of get your take on things. I hope you've enjoyed this particular episode of Class Say to Play, and we will see you next time. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel to support me. You may also want to check out some of the other videos on this channel. Bye for now.